which I attended, and I thought it was lovely to see so many women together practicing different aspects of Buddhism, having diverse opinions, and yet being able to love each other. And I thought this was a wonderful example of what is possible. Because when at the ending ceremony, which you attended, it was beautiful to see that in spite of differences, there was nothing but love and harmony in the hall. So I feel that the contribution that women have to make is one which is of the utmost importance. And we are, I think, really doing that today. Women teachers are important because I think that they stress that aspect more and can be, therefore, need to be role models. That is something I never had. I never had a woman role model. I only saw monks and male teachers. I never got to know a woman teacher until I was already teaching myself. Well, with regard to the role model, I must mention the very first meditation teacher which I had, who was the mother at the Sri Aurobindo ashram, who was a Western woman, a French woman, and had lived in India by that time for 50 years or more, and she was revered in India by the Indians as a great saint. I never got to know her that well. I stayed in the ashram for 3 months, and I did get the meditation instructions from her, and I admired her greatly. I thought she was a wonderful person, but also a wonderful teacher, because she had hundreds and hundreds of people in that ashram, and she ran it completely on her own with great love, but also great strength. And I thought that was very admirable. Well, as far as celibacy goes, I might not be the right person to ask, because at 67, that's not really a problem anymore. But on the other hand, if one looks at it in a general way, celibacy in the monastic life is a great help if it's looked upon as that, because it makes one independent of the emotions of a very close person. And that independence eventually, when carried further, leads to freedom. It leads to the freedom of being independent of the emotions of others, not by being indifferent, but by cultivating and developing the equanimity, which is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So celibacy makes you independent, and it also removes one of the sense desires, one of the gratifications for sense desire, which is the strongest. It's the strongest sense desire that we have. And sense desire is, of course, a condition where we are dependent upon the gratification from outside sources. And therefore, we are actually the victim, because we have to look for the outside source. And if the outside source is not available, we may find that very saddening or very difficult. Whereas if we can find the gratification within ourselves, where we can find our own joy and inner happiness through the meditative practice and through insight, we become independent of the outer sources. And we become independent of our sense contacts. It doesn't matter whether we see, hear, taste, touch, or smell anything nice, because we carry the inner joy within. That's why in the monastic life it is absolutely essential that the meditative practice is cultivated to the point where it brings that inner joy. Without that, I would say that monastic life is difficult, and it becomes very easily drudgery. Men teachers. Yeah. Yes, well, you see, teaching is a power position, and men, I think, have more problem with that, because the world has always suffered under men's power positions. And this is how we always get our wars started. So I don't think that any woman in her right mind wants to send her son to war. I mean, it's just never, it doesn't sound right. So the power position of a teacher is one which has to be watched very carefully by the teacher, him or herself. I was aware of this difficulty before I ever started, and have tried to watch myself to the best of my ability. If I've ever slipped, I apologize to my students. I am trying very hard to watch that position from a standpoint of there's nobody teaching. And of course, as I teach more and more and practice longer and longer, it does become easier. I dare say that if you don't watch that position, you're in trouble. And you might not be in trouble sexually, but you are in trouble. Because, you see, there's one thing one has to remember, that you either grow or deteriorate. It is impossible to stand still. There's no way that anything in this universe can stand still. Either you grow spiritually and you have more understanding, or you deteriorate and become less spiritually aware. So as a teacher, you have that responsibility not only to yourself but to everybody that comes in contact with you, because people look to you for their answers. So one of the ways that the power play for a teacher can be removed is also that if you make it quite clear that you're nothing but an organ for the Buddha's words, that you're not doing anything on your own, you're just speaking for the Buddha. Now that is helpful, because then people will not try to use you as their guru or put you on a pedestal. But on the other hand, the celibacy problem seems to be a male one. I haven't heard of any problems with women. And luckily, I cannot identify myself with that. Well, I base my teaching strictly on the discourses of the Buddha out of the different collections, Majjhima Nikaya and Anguttara Nikaya, graduated sayings and middle-end sayings primarily. I've studied them for years. I know quite a number of them very well, because I've taught them many times. And there isn't a single discourse that I could think of at the moment where the Buddha doesn't start out with the position we're in at this moment, which is, of course, unenlightened, which has its usual human problems, doesn't go gradually through the training to the goal, Nibbana, enlightenment. And if you go through the discourse in a course of meditation and take each step at a time, obviously it leads to that. And this was the way the Buddha taught. I was just discussing that today. The idea of making life more peaceful, more harmonious, as we are here in the world, which is a very worthwhile goal and aspiration. But the only way we can become really peaceful, harmonious, and happy in this world is when we leave it behind, when it doesn't matter anymore, when it isn't of the greatest consequence. Then we can actually enjoy it, because it doesn't matter anymore whether we get it or not. So as long as it's there, it's beautiful and enjoyable. And when it is not there, nothing has changed, because the heart is free. And that's the way to become peaceful and harmonious. To just try to become peaceful and harmonious in this world, to my mind, is an uphill battle.